The IFA Show. The stories behind the financial advice headlines with the team from IFA.
Hello and welcome to the IFA Show. I'm your host, Keith Ford, and today I'm joined by MLC Expand CEO Liz McCarthy and CEO of Shadforth Financial Group, Terry Dillon. Welcome to the show, Liz
Thanks,
and Terry.
Pete. Thanks for having us.
Thanks for having us.
It's great to have you on. The topic that we're talking about, in many ways, it's all anyone's talking about, being that it's AI. At the same time, the way that everyone kind of approaches AI and how to implement it into the specific businesses or industries that they're in, it's a little bit unique. Can you give us a little bit of a rundown, Liz, on what MLC Expand's doing in terms of the AI tools and kind of the background for the business in that space?
Yeah. So we've been working with solutions involving AI for about 6 years on and off. Most recently, we've produced for Terry's business what we call a CSA form, which is really fundamentally a form that advisors use to gather their fees from their clients.
Okay.
And with that particular form, we have worked with Terry's business to actually uplift data from another system and actually join it with the form using a large language model and AI as a solution to drive efficiency. So fundamentally, that form no longer needs to be completed and key typed in form the way things used to do. It's automatically done now, drawn through to our Expand platform, and then the back office simply just check it and send it out the door to their clients to be signed.
Yeah.
So that's one of the examples we're doing at the moment.
A big part of the usefulness of any technology really is the data that's coming into
Correct.
it. And
It's
so
all about the source of the data.
Pulling it in and making sure it's coming from the right source and then everything's in the place it needs to be, probably pretty important.
Yeah, 100%. And that's the challenge, is to get the data from the right sources into the right places. And doing it correctly means for businesses like Terry, it reduces the risk of keying data in incorrectly. It saves, and Terry will talk to this, but, about 15 minutes per form. Yeah. And we might do hundreds and hundreds of forms in a year.
Yeah. Liz, Shadforth would do 10,000 client service agreements in a year.
Right. The 15 minutes, it's like, save you 15
really
minutes. Over 10,000 forms, the scale becomes apparent. Right?
Yeah, that's right. And when you see that and then you cascade that across not just Terry's business, but 5,000 advisors that use Expand, that's a big efficiency and a big change. So that's one example. The other one we're working on is an application form, and that's where, you're saving hours and hours and hours in getting the data from the right spot out of an SOA or a statement of advice, and then pre-populating the application form for Expand and straight through processing once again. So that, that's 15 minutes or more, hours and hours worth of savings, and, reduce risk because you're not getting the data wrong. And then what we're finding is most practices are using that saving to pay that forward to servicing more clients with the time they've got and the staff they've got. They don't have to hire more people to do more work.
Yeah. Either able to charge less for the advice because you can fit more clients in, or increase profitability because you're able to fit more clients in, or a mixture of the two potentially, depending on what the firm wants, really.
Yeah.
My understanding is that MLC Expand's been using AI for a bit longer than just this most recent announcement. So there's a bit of a history of it. What's the history with MLC Expand with using AI and the robotics in general? What's that history like?
Yeah, so there's two domains that we see the greatest benefits for. One is in providing our advisors with more efficiency, similar to Shadforth's business, but the other one is for our internal client first teams. So that's really about, once again, helping those humans that are servicing incoming calls or chats or emails uplift their service capability. A really good example of that is a thing that we call Orbit, which is it's almost like a chat GPT, but it's an internal proprietary system that we've built that allows all the documents that might go with servicing a member or someone in pension phase, there's just so many rules and regulations that front office teams need to be able to get across from an incoming call while somebody's on the call. And it's wads and wads of documents, so they can use this chat GPT, if you like, we call it Orbit, just to type in something. Large language model kicks off and goes and finds the answer and brings it back to that frontline team in seconds, as opposed to in the past where they've, searched through a repository of information to try and find the right answer. Usually they'll get it right, but like anything, there's risks in that as well. So we've found this tooling to reduce that risk and just improve their service time.
Right. Terry, from the advice firm side of things, you're kind of implementing some of these technologies. Is it something that Shadforth had a bit of experience using, some of the prior MLC Expand tools, for instance, or just in general going down that path? Or is this kind of the first foray that Shadforth's made into utilizing these kind of tools?
Keith, it's probably worth just starting. It's a great time to be in advice, right? There's more demand for it than there is supply.
Absolutely.
But if you were to do these podcasts every week, as I think you do, and you talk to advice people, you'd probably hear a similar thing, that every advice practice is struggling with capacity. And part of that capacity problem is their advisors are spending too much time in back office administration and not enough time talking to clients, getting deeper into their lives, helping them more, and bringing on new clients and meeting some of that gap that we have in the demand for advice versus the supply. So I wouldn't overstate how far ahead we've been on this stuff. We still see advice as basically hand-to-hand combat, where you've got to spend a lot of time with people. We're a higher net worth business, so there's deeper relationships and there's more than the investments that we do. But we have a really clear business plan to double the size of the business over the next 4.5 years. That means going from servicing around 10,000 families to 20,000 families. We're not going to do that by just working harder. Okay, we're going to need to really embrace technology and obviously AI. So part of that 2030 vision, we have a really clear technology roadmap for all of our advice processes, and it's all the simple things, right? It's the AI file note tools, which are prevalent at the moment, but we want to build that in a way where the file note it's just not a transcript of the meeting. It's a file note that pushes through to our proprietary advice technology and into Xplan and into a paraplanning request. And eventually it'll have some smarts that will help the paraplanners write the advice. So we're being very deliberate about the way we build out that tech investment, because it will be a big investment over time. And the developments that Expand are making really push us towards straight-through processing, where we prepare a statement of advice. The AI somehow reads that and creates the account opening forms without us keying things. Now, we would do something like 4,500 SOAs a year that all have advice outcomes. And for us to be able to get more quickly from that document to investing for clients and implementing those recommendations is really powerful. So I think your question was, how deep are you into it? I wouldn't overstate how far we are into it yet. We are being very deliberate. And, if you ask me that question in 2 or 3 years' time, I'll have a better answer. But we do have a really clear plan for where we're going.
Yeah. You mentioned in there, and Liz, you might be able to answer this one, around somehow the AI reads it. It is one of kind of the drawbacks of AI is, in many cases, even the people who build it, not entirely sure how it works, which makes it a little tough to wrap your head around for some people. And I'm sure there are advisors who part of their reticence to kind of embrace an AI technology is something along those lines, just not really knowing how it does what it does. When I'm sure you would probably, if you're looking at an investment, deciding whether it's a good call or not, if you can't tell why the company's doing well, you might be like, can't invest in it, even if it's going gangbusters. I don't understand the fundamentals. I'm out. What would you say to an advice firm that's kind of grappling with that decision to kind of get them over the line to be like, no, yes, maybe you won't understand the actual technology here, but it does still have the outcomes that you need.
I mean, you hear about all these AI solutions hallucinating and so on and so forth. But in fact, when Terry was talking before, You talked about not overstating stuff, but I think this business they're doing a lot of work that's, I would say, at the forefront of the technology. We've spent a lot of time thinking about governance and privacy around data and making sure that where we get sources of data from and how we use that data is watertight. So we've gone down paths where we've had to change direction because our governance teams are like, no, that's private information. You cannot pass that across from one thing to the other, So we've been very careful about that. We also have some great licensees like Terry and Shadforth where we practice for a long time and make sure that we co-create what we're getting and we check the answers we're getting before we ever release it to market. So you can rest assured that the client service fee or the fee form, for example, we practice that. We've been going for most of the year, months and months and months and months to make sure that what we saw and what Terry's back office saw was right before we released it. So we would have done thousands and thousands and thousands before we let it go. But we're still not, even in that situation, ready to go straight through. So we still have someone cast their eyes across it because the last thing an advisor would want to do is have the wrong revenue coming in the door and have to go back and say, actually, I've charged you too much or I've charged you too little. So
it'd almost be harder to have the I've charged you too little conversation.
A little bit. And how did you get that wrong? Oh, my AI, got it wrong. So, and I think that's how anything we're doing at Expand that involves a technology and a solution like this that still is in its early stages. We do take a lot of steps to make sure that we've governed it carefully. We've thought this through before we let it go, because I'd like to see us get to a point where you could be recommending something back out to an advisor, food for thought for them to recommend to their client. But, that's possible today. We could do that, but you need to be careful with a lot of these things.
How much of the development process was kind of based on advisor feedback?
All of it.
And it's just all of it. And I'm guessing Terry and Shadforth were a part of that process.
Yeah.
So what kind of things did you bump up against when going to advisors and they're saying, actually, what we need is something completely different? Were there instances where that kind of thing was happening?
Oh, Terry's probably. I'll give you my thoughts. Well, you go.
No, you go, Liz. You'll be better than me.
What we decided to pick off to work on was where the big rinse and repeat processes were, right? Where it's just boring work that needs to get done to earn your money. So that kind of guided us there. And nobody ever said, no, don't go there. What they would give us feedback on is where it's reconciling the names, that doesn't match.
Right.
Because we've got a middle name and you don't. So exception drop, we have exception handling that goes somewhere else, right? So it's refining those things. Someone's put like I'm an Elizabeth, but they had Liz, failure. So it's more about the co-creation on that front when we're matching off data, which would seem really simple, but as time goes on, the fallout from little bits and pieces like that, it's sharpening those things up along the way. That's what we worked on.
Terry, from your side, what were you finding?
Yeah, we just started with the small number of processes that we do the most. So that was client service agreements and SOAs. The many other things that firstly, we'd never let AI choose investments. It would do it badly. We'd never do that. Humans are going to choose the investments. But we have a lot of repeatable tasks. And when we do them manually with this double keying, people make mistakes. When AI works properly, it won't make mistakes and it will do things much faster and much more efficiently. So we have a sort of grand vision that we will eventually have an advice ecosystem that includes all our people and our processes, our platform providers, our advice engagement tools, and it will be a total Shadforth experience that someone will get, and it will talk to each other and operate efficiently. At the moment, we've got little bits and pieces like the CSAs and the beginning of the SOA reading work, but I think you don't have to have a great imagination to look 18 months or 2 years into the future and see a much more joined up ecosystem of advice systems making existing advice much more efficient, but also helping us solve this big advice gap that we've got that most people who need advice aren't getting it at the moment, and they probably can't afford it because it can't be delivered efficiently. And Shadforth's a high net worth business, so we're probably not going to solve that problem, but we are going to get a lot more efficient with our clients and be able to serve a lot more people than we can today.
Do you see it perhaps, obviously you've mentioned high net worth, and so solving the advice gap, probably not where you're going to come in.
We will help at the margin.
At the margin. A lot of advisors have been trending towards higher net worth, creating that advice gap because of how expensive it is to provide advice, therefore how expensive it is to charge for it. Obviously, these AI tools at the moment, in your business, you're implementing it. It's going to help you. You'll be able to service more clients. For the advisors that are not servicing, the high net worth market, going more into the kind of middle class or wherever it lands,
mass affluent,
the mass affluent, exactly. Do you feel there's any reason why this wouldn't just pass across the learnings that you're getting from utilizing the AI tools straight across to other firms?
No, I think it'll be, I think they'll pass across nicely, and perhaps they'll even make a bigger effect at the mass affluent advice. They're only going to be part of it, though. You're not going to solve it purely with technology. We're going to need more advisors. 15,000 advisors aren't going to cut it. And Shadforth has got very strong growth, but we're not going to cut it by just growing our own advisor numbers. So, some of our advisors are looking after more clients per advisor than they were a year ago, and they're looking after more clients per advisor than they were a year before that. Right. And some of that is early stage efficiencies. But we're going to need more advisors to meet that advice need. And again, I see AI as one of the tools to help us do it, become more efficient. And I actually think the benefits are probably bigger at the mass affluent because we're always going to want more time with our clients, more face-to-face time. That's our point of difference. We're going to want to get to know their families and be deeper in their total balance sheets. And we're not just looking after the super money, we're providing comprehensive advice. But for those great business like Bridges, that's part of Insignia, where it has more mass affluent clients, it needs this technology to be able to expand the clients it can look after.
Yeah. And so on that kind of topic where you were talking about, some of your advisors, they're seeing more clients than they did a year ago, more than a year before that. From the, early results of being involved with the pilot of getting the AI tool up and running, has there been any, and Liz, I'll probably have this same question for you after Terry, are there any kind of measurable results or early indicators that you've found that have really showed where it's made a difference?
The first thing is it's helping our support team rather than the advisors, right? It's our client service managers and associate advisors who are tending to do this work, who are now spending less time on manual rekeying. But that helps the whole system, right? If we have those people available, we can serve more clients. Our advisors will really get a big uptick from AI when, rather than taking an associate into a long meeting, the new file note tool has a transcript of the meeting, puts it into a sensible file note, delivers the power planning request. That's where we'll get the biggest advice uplift, I think. The Expand capabilities are really great, but they're probably helping our support team rather than our frontline advisors.
Yeah. And Liz, from the MLC Expand side, what have you seen in terms of, what you've been able to measure so far and early indicators of where it's heading and where it's helping?
Yeah, I think that's a really good question, Keith. And one of the things that we get the opportunity to see are those practices that are, and businesses and licensees that are really humming versus those that aren't.
Right.
And if you look at Shadforth's, and I'm not just saying this because I'm part of the Insignia group, but when I'm traveling around the country talking to advisors, could be an independent financial planner, they always look at Shadforth as the gold standard. Right. And they ask about how they do it. And the way they do it is having consistent approaches to things that are repeatable, the investment philosophy, the way that they serve a client, the sales process, the whole bit has been thought through. And it didn't happen yesterday. It's been a business cycle of, repeated growth and development. And so when you start to link in aspects like a fee form, an application form driven from an SOA, file notes, and all these, it'll be like a hockey stick for a business like Shadforth. It just goes. And What I've noticed about other licensees, not all, but larger groups, particularly at the moment where there's an acquisition going on. Businesses are acquiring other businesses to build capabilities and businesses like Shadforth. It's like herding cats because they've got all different ways of doing things. So until you get that understanding and you start to do some of the things, the building blocks that are being done in Shadforth's, you won't get the benefit out of it. Whereas these guys are actually going to be able to do more with what they've currently got. And that's what I've found that I'm seeing most often is it's not necessarily, it's more about using the humans you've got in the business to do more with the same, rather than, I think we were all fearing AI might be taking away jobs. I actually think it's adding more. You could do more for your clients, spend more time with them on the phone, whatever that might be. But that's a real distinction that I'm seeing, that there'll be those that can afford to do it with the capital and those that aren't. There'll be quite a divergence in different types of businesses.
Yeah. Looking at it from, you've got the early stage implementation with, with a firm like Shadforth, the rollout from there and trying to get it into more hands, more advisors utilizing it. What does that look like? Does it change the way, obviously, when it's within the same group, there's maybe some governance that you can work with and similar compliance.
We definitely have relationships that we leverage, and that's partly the co-creation part is just a blessing because you can, work very closely. But if you take the Rhombus group, for example, that's similar there. We not as tight as Terry's, but they're quite independent of us now. So we just, it's a bit like once we get it right, we can turn it on, and we've actually launched it across the market. Yeah. So we're not just working with Shadforth anymore. It's the same thing, test and learn, test and learn, test and learn. Most of us are doing that same repeatable process. Could be a slightly different form, could be a slightly different place where we get the data from, but they're all tweaks around the edges. It's more governance that I worry about than the technology itself.
Yeah. Which, is that more of a concern with when it's broadened out or opened up to a broader advice audience than, the aligned kind of firms? Or?
It's always a consideration, and it's always something that we cross-check those aspects.
Yeah.
But we're getting more and more confident as we roll things out. Yeah.
From the Shadforth side of things, Terry, if you're looking for what's the next thing you need AI to help with, what's the next cab off the rank that you think this is an area that so far we don't have a solution for, we really need to go in this way, this is where it would be a massive help?
Well, rather than being dramatically different, I think it would be taking the ideas we've got now, and Liz will understand the AI potential there, but rather than it being reducing the amount of double keying that people are doing, to genuinely link AI up into the advice process where you're getting the smarts. Now, at the moment, we don't trust it for that, and it's not developed enough for that. But if you think about a business like ours that's providing thousands and thousands of pieces of advice a year, we're always going to have a human being overseeing it, but there is simple data gathering and analysis that AI could do. Remember, our vision for how it would work, though, is that you have a joined up advice ecosystem where your platforms and your advice technology link in some ways so that you have a true sort of ecosystem that your clients are sitting in. Now, we have it with our platforms. We have we have it with our investments. We have a link to our technology-enabled managed discretionary accounts. There's enhancements coming from Liz and her team at Expand. What will it look like? I guess if I knew, I'd probably be in the technology sector. I just know it won't look like this, where we're still patching things together and getting incremental value. There'll be some real breakthroughs. And I think, quite frankly, whilst some of the smaller firms out there can probably be very nimble and move quickly, it's probably one of the bigger firms that will crack it, because you can invest. You've actually got the money and the scale to invest, and the benefit to the firm is so big that you can both find the money and also have that long view of getting a return on that money.
I would think also probably the amount of advisors able to be included in trialing a product or a tool would make it easier to have, more likely that if you've got 50 advisors using it, they're going to have unique challenges that they've found, and then makes it easier to kind of tweak and streamline and fix those issues before it's rolled out to the entire audience, I guess.
Yeah, very much so. Yeah.
Yep, and the superpower for Shadforth is getting 100 advisors doing things exactly the same way. Now, that's really tough in the IFA world, right? It's a lot of great businesses and everything, but getting 2 people to agree on anything is probably quite difficult. In Shadforth, we argue things out, and we have very direct feedback on what we're going to do. But once we decide on the way forward, we have 100 people, all of our advisors operating the same way, and that's how you really benefit from these things. So. When Liz was talking about the strength of Shadforth or any business, it's getting the whole team to adopt things properly and then implement them properly.
Yeah. And that's one thing where AI does actually drive businesses, a group, to do things the same way.
Right.
Because you've all got to agree on the form, you've all got to agree on the process, you've all got to agree. So it's almost driving the answer anyway in some of these firms that are larger.
Where do you think the balance between how much automation AI can be within a process with then the human side? Now, obviously, Terry mentioned choosing investments, AI not part of that. Yeah. So that's a line in the sand for Shadforth, obviously. Yeah. Where do you find or feel that it will get to with how much automation and AI is involved versus the human?
I think that depends on time. I mean, I can see a time in the future, not tomorrow, where there is an agent that is driven by data based on experts like the advisors in Terry's team who have identified this person here in front of me looks exactly like client ABC that we've seen hundreds of times before, therefore recommend that. I can see a time when there is an agent, but I think it'll be for certain types of client. Could be those clients that are no longer advised and just have chosen not to be advised anymore. They're in a pension phase and don't want to pay a fee. That could work for them. But I think there's always going to be a cohort in this superannuation and retirement and how you save for your retirement that you need a human, because everybody's circumstances are so varied that I can't see that happening in the next little while, but who knows? I mean, you've got to be in this AI game to learn from it, just in case it does crack it sooner than you thought.
Yeah. One of the things that I've heard a few people say, I can't remember who, so I'm unfortunately stealing it without credit, but is that you're not competing with AI, you're competing with all of the advisors that are using AI. So if you're not using it, that's where the problem is. Not that AI is going to take your job. It's just
I would
an advisor
agree with that. You've got to
AI
practice with it and work it out, right? It could be triggers. It could be triggers around something intergenerational wealth. We've seen, Mr. Advisor, do you know it's time to have that conversation at this point?
Yeah.
It could be alerts. It could be things that we're seeing. It could be predictive modelling around economic shifts and saying, we think something like this is going to happen pretty soon. We've seen it before. Be aware of this. If you see it, it's a conversation you need to have with your client. I think there's so many applications.
Yeah.
And it's about data, joining all this data together.
Terry?
Oh, look, when I said that, we'll never let it choose investments, that's probably a very Shadforth answer. I think in the big super funds, in MLC's massive super fund, they will build AI agents, digital advisors that will help people who can't afford comprehensive advice get advice. And they'll have guardrails around it where it can't go too wrong because it will be limited in the scope that it can do. But for many of these people, that will be a very good answer for them rather than not getting advice at all. So I can see that happening. Robo-advice as an idea hasn't really worked the way people hoped it would work, right? All of the robo-advisors are now pairing up humans, but they're pairing up humans with the benefits of robo-advice to get better outcomes for more people. So I could definitely see all of the super funds using it more. I could see comprehensive advice businesses like us using it to be more efficient and serve more clients. So I think it's really broad. And, my sort of message to the team is this is coming. We're going to embrace it and we're going to use it to have better and deeper relationships with client and free up human time and be able to help more people. We're not going to resist. We're going to be careful. But if we are not using it, our competitors will be, and we need to be able to compete with them.
Yeah.
What do you think the upper limit on how many clients you can service? Where's that line kind of hit for?
Yeah, I hear some strange. Now again, we're higher touch. We see clients a lot more often in a year than some businesses. We have our average client has 108 client families they look after. Our most profitable and best, no, they're not best. Sydney is our fastest growing, highest quality, highest net worth business. It's only 87 families per advisor there. The clients are bigger. We have some great advisors looking after 180 client families. And in theory, that shouldn't be possible. But they're very efficient and they use every tool that we have, and perhaps they're slightly more simple clients. So it's a very big question where there's not one answer. When I hear of people looking after more than 200 clients, I worry about how effectively you can do that and service the clients well if you're charging properly for advice. Perhaps with technology you will be able to, but we think for our business, we think going from 108 clients to 125 or 30 clients per advisor over the next couple of years is very doable with actually increasing the service we give clients, not decreasing it.
This is a very interesting category. I was in financial services, say 14 years ago, and I spent some time in aviation, home loans, payments, and to some extent you can see the adoption of AI and that tooling. It's a solution. There's robotics, but it's where you've got this kind of intelligence going, but you're engaging with a group of people that maybe understand a home loan a little better, for example. It's very interesting, the level of engagement in superannuation. So you're not talking to people often that have, many do, but a lot aren't engaged with the accumulation of their wealth to spend in retirement. So AI is going to have to do a big load of heavy lifting to get people where they need to be to get their financial literacy where it needs to be first. And I think that's probably where AI may play a much greater role that helps members think through some of the things that they need to get through, then bring the rules and the regulations to play.
Yeah.
But and I think it'll work well in a direct sense.
Yeah, I was going to say, Liz, I think that's a great example of where there is no commercial model at the moment for being able to educate large amounts of people about their finances, whether it be their super balance. AI could do that, right? It could do that at very low cost,
do that,
and you could lift everyone's financial literacy, and assuming it was engaging enough and it knew enough about you and everything else. So that is a huge opportunity. Bit different for our business because we're probably going to be dealing with more financially aware people, and we will use it for other things. But I think if you're a large super fund and you're wondering MLC has 1.5 million members. How are they going to educate those people and send them nudges and engage them? AI is probably going to be a big part of it over time.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think that's probably a fair call. That is actually everything that I had for you guys. So thank you very much for joining me on the show.
Keith, thanks for having us.
Thanks for having us.
Awesome.
Pleasure.
That's all I've got today. So thank you everyone for listening along. I hope you enjoyed the show. We'll be back next week. Bye for now.